I returned from Singapore after 10 years apart, dreaming of surprising my daughter Hannah and meeting my 4-year-old granddaughter Grace in the beautiful Denver home I bought them. But as I quietly turned my key in the front door, I heard my son-in-law's voice cut through the silence. "Clean that mess up faster, or you'll get another beating tonight." I froze. Through the doorway, I saw Hannah on her hands and knees, picking up shattered dishes with trembling fingers, wearing a dirty apron that read, "Hamilton Family Property." They dared to treat my daughter like this, I would make them pay. My name is Jacob Bennett, and this is the story of how I stood up to protect my little girl. Before I share this powerful story about family and justice, comment below with your location and current time. I'm curious to know if you're listening during your morning coffee or winding down for the night. 10 years of working in Singapore's tech industry had been worth every sleepless night. I'd built data centers under that relentless tropical sun, saved every dollar, all for this moment. Coming home to surprise Hannah and finally meet Grace face to face. The Denver streets looked exactly as I remembered as my taxi pulled up to the house on Cherry Creek Drive. Same red brick facade, same white picket fence, same oak tree where Hannah used to climb. This was the house I'd bought for her before leaving for Singapore, my gift to ensure she'd always have a safe place to call home. I stood on the sidewalk, hands trembling as I pulled out my key. Hannah had no idea I was coming. This was going to be the surprise of a lifetime. The front door opened silently. I stepped inside, grinning as I prepared to call out, "Surprise!" But the word died in my throat when I heard a man's voice from the living room. "Clean that mess up faster, or you'll get another beating tonight." My blood turned to ice. Through the hallway I saw Hannah on her hands and knees, scrubbing vomit from the hardwood floors. She wore a dirty apron with words that made my stomach lurch. "Hamilton Family Property." My daughter labeled like she belonged to them. Suddenly Huxley's demeanor shifted completely. His face transformed from cruel anger to a bright smile as he strode toward me with arms outstretched. "Dad, welcome home," he exclaimed with false warmth. "What a wonderful surprise. Hannah was just helping with some housework. You know how she is, always wanting to pitch in." Hannah scrambled up quickly, untying the degrading apron and shoving it behind a couch cushion. Her movements were frantic, desperate. "Dad," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, just tired." A small figure peeked out from behind Hannah's legs, Grace seeing me in person for the first time. Her big brown eyes studied me with curiosity and fear. "Mommy," Grace whispered, "who is that man?" The words hit like a punch. Despite our video calls, I was still a stranger to her. I crouched to her level voice, gentle despite the turmoil inside me. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm your Grandpa Jacob. Remember me from our video calls? I've been working far away, but now I'm here to visit you and Mommy." Grace buried her face against Hannah's leg, overwhelmed. Hannah placed a protective hand on her daughter's head, and that's when I saw it. A dark purple bruise wrapping around Hannah's forearm. "Hannah," I started, but she quickly pulled her sleeves down, shooting me a look that screamed, "Not now." Huxley clapped my shoulder with practiced familiarity, warning in his eyes. "She's been a little clumsy lately," he said with a hollow laugh. "You know how women can be, always bumping into things." Something was very wrong. The confident daughter I'd left had become a frightened animal, constantly glancing at her husband for approval. My granddaughter, who should have been running into my arms, cowered behind her mother, like I was a threat. Standing in what should have been a joyful reunion, one thought crystallized with absolute clarity. I needed to find out what had happened to my family. And I had a sinking feeling the truth would be far worse than I could imagine. 3 hours later, I got my chance. Huxley left for a business meeting, though the whiskey smell suggested otherwise. Grace was napping, and the house felt different without his oppressive presence. Hannah sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. In the afternoon light, the bruises were even more visible, not just on her arms, but grip marks around her wrists. "Hannah," I said gently, pulling up a chair, "tell me about those bruises. Don't say you're clumsy. I raised you. You were the most coordinated kid on the block." She flinched, wrapping her arms defensively. "It's nothing, Dad. Just work accidents. I've been doing physical tasks, helping with renovations." Her voice wavered, avoiding my eyes. This wasn't my confident daughter who used to debate politics over Sunday dinner. I took her hand gently. "Hannah Rose Bennett," I said, using her full name like when she was little. "Remember what I promised the day you were born? I'd always protect you. That promise doesn't expire." The dam broke. her face crumpled, tears streaming. Her body shook as she collapsed into the frightened girl she'd become. "Oh, Daddy," she sobbed, using the name from childhood. "I messed up so bad. After Grace was born, I got sick. Really sick up here." She tapped her temple. "The doctor called it postpartum depression. I couldn't get out of bed some days. Couldn't take care of Grace. Huxley's family said they'd help take care of everything while I recovered." She wiped her nose, voice dropping to a whisper. "I was on heavy medication, Dad. Everything was foggy. I couldn't think straight. They kept bringing papers to sign. Insurance forms, they said. Medical authorizations. I signed whatever they put in front of me because I trusted them. My heart broke watching her relive this nightmare." "What kind of papers?" "Property transfer documents. Power of attorney forms. They said it was temporary, just until I was better. When the fog cleared, and I understood what I'd signed." She looked around the kitchen that should have been hers. "They told me I'd signed the house over, that I was now their live-in caregiver, working off the debt of their help." Rage built inside me, unlike anything I'd ever felt. These people had preyed on my daughter at her most vulnerable moment. They said if I didn't obey, if I tried to leave, they'd prove I was unfit and take Grace away. Her voice broke completely. "So I stayed. I've been their servant in my own home for 3 years, Dad." She walked to a kitchen drawer, pulling out a thick manila folder. "I kept everything. Medical records, the papers I signed, everything. I kept hoping someday someone would help me understand what really happened." As I opened that folder, one thought echoed. They had made the biggest mistake of their lives when they decided to mess with Jacob Bennett's daughter. That night, I spread Hannah's medical records across the kitchen table like a detective working a case. What I found made my blood run cold. The dates told a story of systematic exploitation that was even worse than I'd imagined. Hannah had signed the property transfer documents on March 15th. According to her medical chart, March 15th was also the day her psychiatrist had increased her antidepressant dosage to the maximum level due to a severe psychological episode. The next morning, I drove straight to Denver General Hospital where Hannah had received treatment. Dr. Patricia Morrison, her former psychiatrist, agreed to meet with me after I explained the situation. "Mr. Bennett," Dr. Morrison said, pulling Hannah's thick file from her cabinet, "I remember your daughter very well. Her case was one of the most severe postpartum depression episodes I've ever treated." She flipped through pages of notes, her expression growing more troubled. "During March of that year, Hannah was barely functional. We had her on sertraline, lorazepam, and quetiapine, heavy medications that severely impair cognitive function and decision-making ability." "What does that mean in practical terms?" I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. "It means she was in no condition to make any legal decisions whatsoever. The medication levels we prescribed would have left her confused, disoriented, and highly suggestible. She shouldn't have been signing birthday cards, let alone property documents." Dr. Morrison called in Rebecca Walsh, the nurse who had worked most closely with Hannah during her treatment. Rebecca's face darkened when she heard what had happened. "Oh my God," Rebecca said, shaking her head. "I remember those days clearly. Hannah was so heavily medicated that some days she couldn't even recognize her own mother when she came to visit. She would stare at people like she was looking through fog. I specifically remember one afternoon when she tried to sign her name on a get-well card from her church group," Rebecca continued. "Her handwriting was so shaky and illegible that we had to help guide her hand. There's no way she could have understood complex legal documents." Dr. Morrison pulled out Hannah's medication log, pointing to the dates with her pen. "Look at this timeline, Mr. Bennett. March 10th through March 20th was her absolute worst period. We were considering hospitalization because she was barely responsive to verbal commands. And they had her sign legal papers during this time." I asked, my voice tight with rage. "If what you're telling me is true, then what they did was not just morally reprehensible. It was legally invalid," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "A person under this level of psychiatric medication cannot give informed consent for anything, especially something as significant as property transfer." Rebecca nodded emphatically. "I'd testify to that in court. Hannah couldn't have understood what day of the week it was, let alone the implications of signing away her house." Dr. Morrison handed me a printed summary of Hannah's treatment during that period. "Mr. Bennett, those signatures are legally worthless. No court in the country would uphold contracts signed by someone in Hannah's condition. What the Hamilton family did constitutes elder abuse and exploitation of a vulnerable adult." As I left the hospital with that medical summary in my hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time since I'd walked through that front door, I knew we had a real chance to fight back. The Hamilton family thought they were clever preying on a sick woman, but they'd just handed me the ammunition I needed to destroy them. Armed with Dr. Morrison's medical summary, I knew I needed professional help. A quick internet search led me to the law offices of Webb and Associates specialists in elder abuse and exploitation cases. Caroline Webb had a reputation for taking down powerful families who preyed on vulnerable people. Her downtown Denver office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower with panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains. Caroline herself was a woman in her early 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a sharp bun and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Bennett," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her mahogany desk, "tell me about your daughter's situation. Don't leave out any details, no matter how small they might seem." I laid out everything: the degrading apron Hannah's postpartum depression, the suspicious timing of the document signings, and Dr. Morrison's medical assessment. Caroline took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking pointed questions about dates and witnesses. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against her lips. "Mr. Bennett, this is textbook exploitation of a vulnerable adult. What the Hamilton family did isn't just morally despicable, it's a federal crime." She spread Hannah's medical records across her desk, cross-referencing them with photocopies of the property transfer documents I'd brought. "Look at this timeline. Your daughter signed away a $400,000 house while she was so heavily medicated she couldn't recognize her own mother. Any first-year law student could get these contracts voided. But here's what makes this case special," Caroline continued, her voice taking on a predatory edge. "The Hamilton family didn't just commit fraud. They created a pattern of ongoing abuse, forcing Hannah to wear that apron, making her work as an unpaid servant, threatening to take away her child. That's human trafficking, Mr. Bennett." My heart pounded as the full scope of what had happened to Hannah became clear. "What can we do about it?" "We're not just getting your daughter's house back," Caroline said firmly. "We're sending the Hamilton family to federal prison, but we need to be strategic about this." She pulled out a fresh legal pad and began outlining our plan. Step 1. We give them 48 hours to voluntarily return the property and pay damages. Some families get scared and settle when they realize they're caught. Step 2. If they refuse, we file both civil and criminal complaints simultaneously. Civil suit to recover the house and damages, criminal referral to the FBI for human trafficking and exploitation charges. Step 3. We contact the Denver Post. Public pressure can be incredibly effective, especially against families who care about their social standing. "And step 4, I asked. Caroline smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Step 4 is when we destroy them completely. Asset forfeiture, prison sentences, and civil judgments that will bankrupt them for generations." She stood up and extended her hand. "Mr. Bennett, I've been practicing law for 25 years, and I've never seen a case with stronger evidence. The Hamilton family picked the wrong victim when they targeted your daughter." "What do we do first?" I asked, shaking her hand. "Tomorrow morning, you and I are going to pay them a visit. We'll give them a chance to surrender peacefully. If they're smart, they'll take it." Her eyes glittered with anticipation. "If they're not, we'll teach them what happens when you mess with Jacob Bennett's family." Walking out of that office, I felt more powerful than I had in years. The Hamilton family was about to discover that their biggest mistake wasn't just exploiting my daughter. It was doing it while her father was still alive to fight back. The next morning, Caroline and I drove through the gates of the Hamilton estate in Cherry Hills Village. The mansion loomed before us. 3 stories of Colorado sandstone with towering columns displaying wealth built on exploitation. A butler led us through marble hallways lined with oil paintings of Hamilton ancestors. William Hamilton waited in his mahogany study, seated behind a massive desk. He was 70-something with silver hair and the soft features of inherited privilege. "Mr. Bennett," he said without rising voice, dripping condescension, "I understand you have concerns about your daughter's living arrangements. Hannah is very happy working for our family." "Working," I said, rage-controlled but visible. "You mean being your unpaid slave in her own house?" William laughed coldly. "You're nobody, Bennett. My family has owned this city for 4 generations. We have judges, politicians, and police commissioners in our pocket. You think one old man can threaten us?" Caroline stepped forward, placing a thick folder on his desk. Mr. Hamilton, I'm attorney Caroline Webb. These are your daughter-in-law's medical records from Denver General, along with expert testimony from her psychiatrist. She opened the folder precisely. On March 15th, Hannah signed property documents while under maximum dose psychiatric medications. Dr. Patricia Morrison states Hannah was so heavily medicated she couldn't recognize her own mother. William barely glanced at the documents. Hannah signed voluntarily. We have witnesses. You exploited my daughter's mental illness. I leaned forward. That's a federal crime, Hamilton. Human trafficking exploitation of a vulnerable adult fraud. Uncertainty flickered in William's eyes. He picked up the medical records, his confidence cracking as he read Dr. Morrison's assessment. This is ridiculous, he blustered, voice lacking conviction. Hannah needed help. We provided it. She's grateful. Caroline smiled like a shark. Grateful, is that why she wears an apron saying Hamilton family property? Why your son threatens to beat her? William's face flushed red. How dare you come into my home making these accusations? I'll have you arrested for harassment. Call the police, Caroline said calmly. I'd love explaining how your family held a mentally ill woman as an unpaid servant for 3 years. Huxley burst in, face twisted with rage. Dad, why are we talking to these people? Let me handle this the way we handle all our problems. Caroline didn't flinch at the threat. Mr. Hamilton, you have 48 hours to return Hannah's house and pay $1 million in damages. If you refuse, we file civil and criminal complaints with the FBI. William stood slowly, hands shaking with fury. You just declared war on the wrong family, Bennett. We'll destroy you and that pathetic daughter of yours. You already tried, I said, standing to face him. But you made one crucial mistake. You left me alive to fight back. Walking out, Caroline squeezed my arm. Perfect. They just made threats in front of witnesses. Now we have intimidation charges, too. The Hamilton family had 48 hours to surrender. Something told me they were too arrogant to take the offer. 47 hours later, the Hamilton family's silence gave Caroline all the answers she needed. The Denver Post's front-page headline screamed, Wealthy family exploits daughter's mental illness to steal home. The article, written by investigative journalist Maria Santos, laid out every damning detail. Hannah's medical records and the suspicious timing of the property transfer and the degrading treatment she'd endured for 3 years. The accompanying photos showed our modest house on Cherry Creek Drive, next to the Hamilton mansion, a visual representation of David versus Goliath. Within hours, the story exploded across social media. Justice for Hannah began trending on Twitter, with thousands sharing their own stories of elder abuse and exploitation. Local news stations picked up the story, camping outside both our house and the Hamilton estate. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, knocked on our door that afternoon with a casserole and tears in her eyes. Jacob, I had no idea what Hannah was going through. The whole neighborhood is talking about it. Everyone wants to help. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. A GoFundMe page appeared overnight, raising money for Hannah's legal expenses. The Denver Women's Shelter offered counseling services. Even strangers stopped me on the street to express their outrage at what the Hamilton family had done. But the real victory came at 2 o'clock that afternoon, when Caroline called with news that made my heart soar. Jacob, get down to the courthouse immediately, she said, barely containing her excitement. Judge Elizabeth Barnes just granted our emergency injunction. Hannah gets her house back today. At the Denver County Courthouse, Judge Barnes's voice rang with authority as she addressed the packed courtroom. Based on the medical evidence presented, it's clear that Ms. Hannah Bennett Hamilton was not competent to sign these documents. The property transfer is hereby declared null and void, effective immediately. The Hamilton family's high-priced lawyers looked stunned. William Hamilton's face turned purple with rage, while Huxley had to be physically restrained by courthouse security when he started shouting threats. Furthermore, Judge Barnes continued, I'm granting a temporary restraining order. The Hamilton family is prohibited from contacting or approaching Ms. Bennett or her family. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. 2 hours later, I watched from our front porch as Denver police officers escorted Hannah and Grace home. Hannah carried a single suitcase, everything the Hamilton family had allowed her to keep from her old life. Grace clutched a worn teddy bear, her eyes wide with confusion about why police officers were helping them. Daddy, Grace whispered to Hannah as they walked up the front steps, are we really going to live here now? Yes, sweetheart, Hannah said, her voice breaking with emotion. "We're home. We're finally home." That evening, as we sat around the kitchen table eating Mrs. Rodriguez's casserole, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Huxley's number. "Answer it," Caroline advised, holding up her own phone to record. "Let's see how stupid he really is." I put the call on speaker. Huxley's voice was slurred with alcohol and rage. "This war isn't over, old man. You think you've won? We will destroy you all. You have no idea what we're capable of." "Are you threatening my family?" I asked calmly. "I'm promising you," Huxley snarled. "Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. Soon you'll wish you'd never come back from Singapore." The line went dead. Caroline smiled grimly as she stopped her recording. "Congratulations, Jacob. He just handed us another felony charge." That night, as Hannah tucked Grace into her own bedroom, for the first time in 3 years, I felt something I hadn't experienced since walking through that front door a week ago: hope. But Huxley's threats echoed in my mind. This battle was won, but the war was far from over. The first week back in our house felt like stepping into a dream I'd been having for 10 years. Every morning I woke up to Grace's laughter echoing through the hallways, a sound absent from these walls for far too long. Hannah moved through rooms like someone rediscovering a forgotten language, pausing in doorways, running fingers along familiar surfaces, as memories of happier times flooded back. "Dad," she said one morning, finding me making pancakes, "I forgot how good coffee tastes when you're not afraid someone's going to scream at you." Grace slowly warmed up to me, her shyness melting as she realized I wasn't leaving. The breakthrough came Tuesday afternoon when I found her struggling with a bicycle clearly too small for her. "Need help there, sweetheart?" I asked, crouching beside her. She looked up with Hannah's eyes full of determination and frustration. "I want to ride like the big kids, but my bike is too baby." That afternoon we bought a bright pink bicycle with training wheels and streamers. Watching Grace's face light up as she pedaled around our driveway was worth every sleepless night in Singapore. I threw myself into fixing the neglected house. Loose floorboards, leaky faucets, peeling paint, small projects that kept me busy while watching my family. Hannah surprised me by joining in. Together we repainted Grace's bedroom. Yellow hung new curtains and planted flowers in the front garden. "Remember when you taught me to use a drill?" Hannah asked one evening as we assembled Grace's bookshelf. "I was 12 and Mom was convinced I'd put a hole through the wall." "You did put holes through the wall?" I laughed. 3 holes. Your mother made me sleep on the couch for a week. Evenings were the best part. Real family meals with conversation and laughter instead of tense silence. Grace would chatter about her day, showing drawings or asking me to read her favorite story about a brave little mouse. "Grandpa," she said one night, the word rolling off her tongue naturally for the first time, "will you read me the mouse story again?" My heart nearly burst. "Of course, sweetheart. As many times as you want." Hannah caught my eye and smiled. A real smile, not the forced expression from when I first arrived. "Dad," she whispered later while cleaning dishes, "I forgot what happiness felt like. Thank you for giving it back." For 10 days we lived in this bubble of contentment. Grace called me Grandpa regularly. Hannah's bruises faded and the haunted look in her eyes began disappearing. We were becoming a real family again. But Thursday night, as I tucked Grace into bed, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar local number. "Don't answer it," Hannah said, appearing in the doorway with worry etched across her face. But I did answer. Huxley's voice was cold and sober this time, more frightening than his drunken rage. "Enjoying your little family reunion, old man," he said. "Don't get too comfortable. Some storms you can't see coming until they're right on top of you." The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone while Grace asked, "Grandpa, who was that? You look scared." I forced a smile and kissed her forehead. "Nobody important, sweetheart. Just a wrong number." But as I turned off her bedroom light, I couldn't shake the feeling that our peaceful days were numbered. 2 nights later, a violent thunderstorm rolled across Denver, rattling our windows and sending sheets of rain against the house. I was lying in bed listening to the wind howl when I heard something that didn't belong. Footsteps on our front porch, slow and deliberate. I slipped out of bed and peered through the bedroom curtains. Lightning illuminated a figure moving around the perimeter of our house, carrying what looked like a gas can. The acrid smell of gasoline began seeping through the walls. Huxley had come to make good on his promise. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 as I ran down the hallway. "There's a man with gasoline trying to burn down my house on Cherry Creek Drive," I whispered urgently to the dispatcher. Sir, we're dispatching units immediately. Get your family out of the house now. But before I could reach Hannah's room, I heard the whoosh of flames igniting outside. Orange light flickered through the living room windows as fire raced around the foundation of our house. Huxley's voice rose above the storm, screaming like a man who'd lost his mind. You destroyed my family, he shrieked. Now I'll destroy yours. Burn it all down. Burn it all. I burst into Hannah's bedroom, shaking her awake. Hannah, we have to go. Now. The house is on fire. She bolted upright, instantly alert. Grace? We ran to Grace's room together. She was already awake, sitting up in bed and crying as smoke began seeping under her door. The hallway was filling with thick black smoke that burned our lungs and stung our eyes. Mommy, I'm scared, Grace sobbed as Hannah scooped her up. I know, baby. Grandpa's going to get us out of here. The front door was blocked by flames, so I led them toward the back of the house. But as we reached the kitchen, Huxley appeared at the sliding glass door, his face twisted with rage and illuminated by the fire he'd set. He was holding a crowbar. Nobody leaves, he screamed, smashing the glass. If I can't have my family, nobody gets to have theirs. I pushed Hannah and Grace behind me, grabbing a kitchen knife from the counter. Hannah, Grace. Get out through the side window in the dining room. Go. I'm not leaving you, Hannah cried. Go, I roared. Protect Grace. Huxley swung the crowbar at my head, but rage had made him clumsy. I ducked and tackled him around the waist, sending us both crashing into the kitchen cabinets. The knife skittered across the floor as we grappled. You want to hurt my family? I gasped, fighting for leverage as smoke filled the room. You'll have to go through me first. Huxley was younger and stronger, but I had 40 years of suppressed fury driving me. Every sleepless night in Singapore, every tear Hannah had shed, every moment of Grace's childhood, I'd missed. It all poured into my fists as we fought. The sound of sirens cut through the storm just as I managed to pin Huxley to the floor. Through the broken sliding door, I could see flashing red and blue lights as fire trucks and police cars flooded our street. Denver police, everyone out of the house. I dragged the semi-conscious Huxley toward the back door as firefighters burst through the front entrance, their hoses already spraying water on the flames that were consuming our home. Outside in the rain, I found Hannah and Grace huddled together on the neighbor's lawn, both safe but shaking with terror. Grace ran to me the moment she saw me emerge from the smoke. Grandpa, I thought you were gone. I knelt down and pulled both of them into my arms as paramedics checked us for smoke inhalation and police officers handcuffed Huxley. Our house was damaged, but still standing, the fire department having arrived just in time to prevent total destruction. It's over, I whispered into Hannah's hair as we watched them load Huxley into a police car. He can never hurt you again. 6 months later, I sat in Denver County Courthouse, watching Judge Elizabeth Barnes deliver the final chapter of our story. The courtroom was packed with supporters who had followed our case from the beginning. Huxley sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his arrogance replaced by the hollow stare of a broken man. Mr. Huxley Hamilton, Judge Barnes said with absolute authority, you have been found guilty of arson, attempted murder, domestic violence, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison without parole. The gavel came down with satisfying finality. Huxley didn't flinch as bailiffs led him away in shackles. 2 weeks earlier, William Hamilton had been sentenced to 8 years for exploitation of vulnerable adult fraud and conspiracy. The Hamilton empire had crumbled overnight. Assets, frozen properties seized their names synonymous with shame. Caroline squeezed my hand. It's over, Jacob. They can never hurt anyone again. The court-ordered restitution was substantial. The Hamilton family paid $2 million in damages. Compensation for the stolen house, Hannah's unpaid labor, emotional trauma, and fire damage. Their mansion cars and business assets were liquidated to pay what they owed us. We used the money to rebuild from the ground up. The new home had bigger windows, a modern kitchen, and a spacious master suite, where I'd moved my belongings from Singapore because I wasn't going anywhere. Dad Hannah had said when I announced I was moving to Denver permanently, "Are you sure you worked so hard in Singapore?" "My life isn't in Singapore," I'd replied. "My life is wherever my family is." The best addition was Grace's backyard playground, with swing set slide and sandbox. Every evening I'd push her on swings while Hannah tended her flower garden. Hire Grandpa. Grace would squeal her laughter, echoing across the neighborhood. At 5 years old, Grace had grown into a confident, joyful child who knew she was loved and protected. She called me Grandpa naturally and insisted I read her the brave little mouse story every night. Hannah had blossomed too. The haunted look was gone, replaced by the spark of the strong woman I'd raised. She'd started night classes working toward a social work degree. I want to help other women who've been through what I experienced, she'd told me. Show them there's always hope. This evening, as I pushed Grace on her swing, Hannah came out carrying 3 glasses of lemonade. She sat on the porch steps, watching us with a radiant smile. "Grandpa," Grace said, slowing her swing to look at me seriously, "will you live with us forever and always?" I caught the swing and knelt to her level, looking into those brown eyes so much like her mother's. "Forever and always, sweetheart. Wild horses couldn't drag me away." "Dad," Hannah called from the porch, voice thick with emotion, "thank you for saving us. Thank you for never giving up." As the sun set over Denver and Grace ran off to chase fireflies, I realized this moment, this perfect ordinary evening with my family, was worth more than all my success in Singapore. Looking back on this journey, I realized how close I came to losing everything that truly mattered. For 10 years, I chased success in Singapore while my daughter suffered in silence. Don't make my mistake. Don't let career ambitions blind you to your family's pain. This true story taught me that God has a way of bringing us home when we're needed most. I believe the Lord guided me back to Denver at exactly the right moment, just as He guides all of us through our darkest hours. Sometimes what looks like coincidence is actually divine intervention. The Hamilton family thought they could exploit a vulnerable woman without consequences. But they forgot that God sees everything and justice always finds its way. Hannah's strength during those 3 terrible years showed me that faith can sustain us through unimaginable hardship. These grandpa stories aren't just about my experience, they're about the power of family bonds that can never truly be broken. When I saw Grace hiding behind her mother, afraid of the grandfather she barely knew, I understood the price of my absence. But love has a way of healing even the deepest wounds. If you're working far from home, remember that no amount of money can replace the moments you miss with your children and grandchildren. Success means nothing if your family is suffering while you're away. This true story could have ended very differently if I'd arrived even a few weeks later. The greatest blessing wasn't the court victory or the new house. It was Grace calling me Grandpa with genuine love in her voice. These grandpa stories remind us that being present is the most precious gift we can give our families. That's why I share these grandpa stories, to inspire other grandfathers to prioritize what truly matters. Don't wait for a crisis to bring you home. Don't assume your loved ones are okay just because they don't complain. And never underestimate the power of a parent's love to move mountains when their child needs them. This true story changed all our lives forever. Hannah found her strength. Grace learned she was protected, and I discovered that home isn't a place. It's the people who love you unconditionally. If this story touched your heart, please share your own family experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories that celebrate the unbreakable bonds of family love. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.